What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Insurance Isn't Boring. We took a little 2-week hiatus from posting, so appreciate you guys hanging in there. A lot's been going on. We had conference, Xander was out of the country, I bought a house and moved, but we back. And we're back with a banger episode with a super cool guest, just to kind of edify what he's done. If you guys don't know this man, you will soon, but he got into this industry same year I did, 2018. So we were the graduating class of 2018. I think you came on board full time out the gate. I started part time and had a little bit of a slower start, but quickly became an elite producer with this company. He's sold over $3 million on his own pen. That's not as a team, that is him getting in front of families, protecting families, writing policies. One of the coolest stats, in my opinion, if you're a sales nut like I am, is he had a string of 200 and, correct me if I'm wrong, Lee, how many weeks in a row, buddy, did you do over 10,000
I think
consecutively?
239.
Okay, I told Xander 235, but I was like, this man did it for like 3 or 4 years straight. 239 weeks in a row, y'all. That is holiday weeks. That is no vacation. Over 10 grand in sales. He resides in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, with his wife Martina. They run a real estate business in addition to an insurance business. And the coolest part, in my opinion, is he's doing all of this, and he's done all of this with English being his fourth language, y'all. This man came to America, learned English as he was getting his insurance license, and he has just freaking dominated since he got here. So, with that being said, Lee Jedlicka, welcome to the show, brother. How are you doing, man?
Hey guys, I'm doing great and I'm just super grateful to be here. Really, I told you I really admire what you do. I know and I feel like we all need more of this. We all need more of this type of content, and I really have a lot of respect for that. And I'm just excited about the future, guys. I'm just excited about what the future brings. And I know the future is bright. And I know that this is still just a peanut and 2% of what we are capable of. So I'm just sitting here with gratitude at ease and just opening my heart to you. Just happy to be part of this community as every minute we connect with those who are kind of on the same frequency. I consider probably the most valuable.
Mm,
So just super happy to be here. And I know that just like we did from the very beginning, where we came into this industry with just, as I say, burning desire and fire in the belly, each call actually had like the one piece of a puzzle that I could use and create that way of business that actually works for me. And I feel like it's never ending process of personal and self development where there is no finish
mm.
line, but every day we can add something to our portfolio that can help us to achieve that goal of positively impacting and helping millions of people, which is ultimately the goal, at least
Mm.
for me.
That's one of the reasons me and Xander decided to start this thing, man, is like we saw, I mean, our company has a ton of training, right? But there's not a lot of content that kind of sheds a light on just the opportunity of this business, but also how blessed we are to be in the same company with so many high caliber people that we can kind of leverage to help new people get going, man. Um, I know, Xander, why don't you kick it off, man? What do you want to dig into first, bro? What do you think the people need to hear?
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that people are going to want to hear from Lee. I think maybe we should start with production. I know that you got back heavier into building last year, more than doubled the size of your agency in a single year, and that's not from 2 to 4 agents, right? That's double digits to bigger double digits, which is not an easy thing to do. You got Latanya James on your team, who's an absolute killer in her own regard. But me personally, I'm always looking forward to picking the brains of builders because and particularly you, right? You've maintained a very, very, very high level of production while scaling a team. That's not an easy thing to do, and I think that's probably everybody's dream. Um, but I think maybe we should start at the beginning, like when you basically started at 10K and never slowed down. Like,
It's
what did that
true.
look like? What were everyone always sees the end result, but what were maybe some of the sacrifices that went into, hey, I'm 10K every week is coming hell or high water. Um, Kind of walk us through a little bit of that, and then we can get into maybe more of the building and leadership side of things.
Yeah, I love that. And if you don't mind, I'll just give you a little bit of a background that is related to that. And as you said, English is my
Please.
fourth language, so I always let people know to be ready for the healthy dose of accent for next hour or so. But that's part of the journey because actually, just that accent could have been my disadvantage, right? But I decided to take it as my advantage, right? And we're going to talk about it later,
Mm.
but I think we all stepping into this business with some kind of strengths and some kind of weaknesses, or we can call it disadvantages, that can quickly turn out to be our new neural pathway that we love to use, especially during the times when stuff gets hard, right? Um, but
Mm.
first, I was actually born in Germany, and let me briefly lived in Czech Republic, Austria, and around the age of 14, I started feeling like I feel like I was touched. I started reading books such as Robin Sharma. If you guys heard The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, that was the book that at the age of 14, imagine it changed my life. And I started feeling that need for more. Like both of my parents are well educated in the medical industry, so they have a decent or very good job. But I always felt like there's more. I always felt, we all have that inner voice on the inside of us, right? Just because most of the human beings are using around 38% of their potential, and I always felt like
That's crazy.
um, I don't want to be like that. I felt that there's a space for greatness and we are ultimate adaptation machines capable of anything we set our mind to. And that was driving me. And so at the age of 19, I got a student visa and came to America. And that's where actually it all started because what I've had to do, what I was forced to do, or how I was forced to behave, because I fall in love with this country. And I tell you, and I think that's one of my biggest strengths is every morning if you guys imagine that you would not be able to have a driver's license for more than 6 months for past 14 years, that you would always see that end date on your passport saying that's the date by which you have to leave the country. If you have no
Mm.
credit and simply just work here as a student and as a visitor, imagine that one day you get the right to be uh, the proud American citizen, which I proudly become last year. And it was
Yeah.
probably,
Yeah.
besides my marriage, which I'll talk about later, it's been probably the biggest achievement of my life. And imagine how many
Yeah.
people take it for granted, right? Just waking up and being
So
proud to
true.
step my feet on the ground of this amazing country. And so it's also funny to say that when I arrived in 2019, I don't know if you guys familiar, I arrived to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina during the bike week.
Yeah, that's
So, and I didn't know it's a
you
bike
got
week.
a quick dose of America that
Oh,
week.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I felt that the game GTA, I really thought, wow, it's actually reality, right? Like I really felt like the GTA.
It's inspired by
uh,
the East Coast.
yes, yes. However, um, there was about 200 people coming every year as ocean lifeguards. I was ocean lifeguard. And my only chance, and I love what Will Smith says, he said, when you jump on the treadmill with me, you know who gets off first. That was my mentality from day one. My only chance was to outwork everyone around me. So I was kind of in that fight or flight mode most of the time, or had that chip on my shoulder most of the
Yeah.
time. But also, it turned out to be my normal state of mind. It turned out to be normal. Just like in when you start in this business, it's hard at the beginning, messy in the middle, and beautiful at the end, right? And it's kind of like this snowball analogy. And I just gave myself one promise from day one, and and that's what Tom Billy is actually saying. The goal of each day to stand nakedly in front of the mirror or stand in front of the mirror and stare nakedly at my own inadequacies, knowing that I just maxed out or gave it my best. And that was the goal of
Mm.
each day. And so I remember that I always had the visa for like 6 months, and I asked the owner of that company that's been around for about 40 years, what's the longest anyone has ever worked for him um, in a row without a day off? And he said like some 4 months. And I literally worked I worked for 6 months from that day straight, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to just to prove him that I deserve maybe the next visa, or just to prove that maybe he can hire me
Mm.
next year as well. And that's how that mentality got developed, right? So um, it was simply, when I'm here in this country, I gotta give it my all, no matter what. And thanks God, I was a professional soccer player when I was a teenager, which I think is important too, because I think we are kind of like a
Yeah.
business athletes, and I think that
Yep.
the
Yep.
discipline from the sport is super important. And so in 2019, I started my journey, which after 4 years and a couple of rewards of lifeguard of the year and stuff, turned out to be the situation when out of like 2,000 people that have come over there to work for that company within past, 10, 20 years, I was the first non-American manager of this company. I was a quality control manager. I brought my wife, who applied the same principles, which I'll like to talk about later. If you guys know another book
Yeah.
from Ray Dalio called Principles, it's a huge book, but just the art of radical transparency, the art of thoughtful disagreement, and simply following those
Yeah.
who have what we want to have. Like for me, reading was such an important part of my life because it's like conversation with those I really admire, and again, book by book, you turn it into habit until 7 years in that business, I was offered a co-ownership of that company. Um, and
Yeah.
simply reached the top of that company, like top management position. There was nothing more we could reach. My wife was recruiting manager, and that was 2018. In July
Okay.
2018, 20, yeah, July 31st, 2018, we just came home and we had all we could ever think about. Um, Working as crazy, but making some 35K a year. And we looked at each other and we were like, is this it? Like, it would be probably a decent life. But we were thinking, what if I can be rewarded more for my hard work versus those who are starting
Yeah.
the day by chatting by the water fountain for 1 hour just to kill the time? And
Yeah.
I really emphasize this because that self discipline, that self credibility, and I love to talk about it before we even jump into this business because it's so
Yeah.
important. People say, "Oh, I'm not disciplined as this guy. I'm not disciplined as the." Of course, not all of us were born disciplined, but what we can do today is to build self credibility, which is leading to discipline. Meaning, I pick up water instead of soda. Meaning, I'll go and take. I always say that these little things literally make us more disciplined. It's proven that the genetic code we were born with does not determine our destiny. And so for me, the big why
So true.
become simply changing generational standards. I did not want to go to work at the age of 65, just as my parents, and go on vacation twice a year. And in order to do that, I had to learn to love some people from the distance and simply develop new behavior. And if you
Mm.
know that what the human beings found out about human brain within past 10, 20 years is more than what has been found out in thousands of years before. And if we know a little bit about our brain, we know how we can literally rewire ourselves and rewire our thinking. So simply not accepting the situation maybe we were born with or the country we were born in, uh, accepting that that does not mean that it's our final destination and it does not determine the quality of life we're going to live, but it's going to take a lot of pain and it's going to take a lot of sacrifices. And so in the July
Mm.
2018, we just decided to quit. Both of myself and my wife, we just gave them everything back, sold the portion of the company, and we looked at the map and actually moved to Fort Lauderdale for absolutely no reason. And then I was radically open-minded and going to conferences. And I was like, look, I'm just going to go from conference to conference. I'll be ready to leave in 10 minutes if I just don't feel it, if I just don't resonate with the values I see. And we showed up at the Symmetry Conference, and within 15 minutes, it was it. Like I could feel that
Yeah.
those on the top who are wearing flip flops and having a family values and just
Yeah.
feeling their hearts and spirit, that just that just made me decide. And from that moment on, I know that that self credibility that you build for yourself that cannot be purchased, that you cannot fake, that actually leads to a bulletproof self confidence, as I call it, the healthy self confidence, the knowing that you are really capable of anything you set your mind to, if you decide to go through the pain of discipline rather than the pain of regret. I always say, and this is one of my favorite things I stepped into this business with, uh, was that I suffered a lot of pain for 7 years. I suffer a lot of pain today. And I think I'll suffer a lot of pain in 9 or 10 years, but I've learned to use the pain as a go to sign instead of the stop sign. But the decision was
Mm.
made based on knowing that I'll just need to learn to struggle well. Meaning, if I decide for mediocrity, it's going to be a struggle, right? Knowing what potential is inside of us and knowing and recognizing that if I decide for greatness, there's going to be a lot of struggle as well. So the purpose is just to learn to struggle well and take struggle as a absolutely necessary part of our lives, regardless of what we decide for. But once you realize that, once you know it's going to hurt, once you know there's going to be a lot of sacrifices, and once you know your why, which is to be bigger than ourselves, which I was just presenting at in Dallas at our Ignite conference when I put that big picture on the wall, and there was like the old version of me and my wife, and there was like a big sofa of kids and grandkids looking at it and saying, "Oh, these are the ones. These are the ones who brought a generation to this country, who suffered through, and who
Mm.
just established that broke those generational curses." Once that is
Yeah.
established in our minds, and I'll love to later talk about manifestations because this is just so powerful. Once you have that in your mind, I think we are unstoppable. I really truly believe that we all can perform at much higher level. And so, yeah, here I was, September 4th, 2018, I got licensed. And that's how it all started. I just become ultimate adaptation machine. I just truly, without any
Mm.
evidence, believed that I can do this. Although there were a lot of voices telling me I cannot, but sometimes the
Yeah.
lack of knowledge, for example, lack of knowledge about different types of leads, sometimes not being able to understand a lot of things because I needed to use translator when I was studying for a license. Sometimes that lack of knowledge is good because you don't fall into
Yeah.
those analysis paralysis, right? And so I just set the thermostat for like 5K a week. And I remember that my first weekend, I made 700 dials, right? I got licensed. I think it was Friday, September 4th, 2018. And that weekend, I made 700 dials and booked like 7 or 8 appointments. And I was like on my knees and I thought up, I had all the reasons to quit. And I went to the field on Monday, not knowing what I'm doing. And I brought home $5,000 on that first Monday.
In a day.
Yes. And
Hold on, pause real quick.
yeah,
Pause real quick, because I just need people to understand how crazy that is. Because, I mean, for us seasoned producers, like once you get the hang of it, a $5,000 day can be a normal thing. But for somebody who gets licensed on Friday and sells 5 grand on Monday, having to use a translator to get said license is no small thing. And so hold on, there's so much that you just dropped that I want to dig into real quick, because you talk about the discipline, and you were disciplined before you got here. I think a lot of people struggle because they go to an event. This was my story. I go to an event similar to you, Lee. I knew within 20 minutes of being there, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I've never gone to a conference before, but I went skeptical. Like I had my license. That's the difference, is I went to my first event, I had my license, but I didn't do anything with it. And then I went, learned what it took, and then got disciplined. And it took me a few weeks to really get the result you got on Monday. You also said you made 700 dials in a weekend. You didn't do that over the course of a week. That was in like 3 days. Did it take you a little bit to learn the script? Like, and we were going and seeing people in person in 2018. So like, where all in Florida were you running appointments? Because now it's a totally different ball game. You could run appointments in 5 different states in one day if you want. But where were you in Fort Lauderdale when you did this, or like where did this happen?
yeah, yeah. I was in Fort Lauderdale actually in 2021. I built my home that was long time manifested here in Naples. So I'm in Naples by Marco Island now, but yeah, it just took a blind faith, and how Erad is talking
Mm,
about unwavering faith and extraordinary effort. However, in
yeah,
terms of the script, I always love to say what one of the most famous professionals in the A.R. Williams or A.L. Williams, you probably know him, like a huge person in the industry. He's talking about the biggest power in this business, and that's a hard power, right? I always say
yeah.
that you cannot outscript the hard power, because my script, I would say, is far from perfect even now, but
Yeah.
I just, when I was given all of these scripts, I felt too tight. I felt like I got to follow word by word. And some of those words, due to my language barriers, were just not fitting my natural way of speaking. And so what I
Mm,
quickly realized was I got to put all of these scripts together to find out what fits me, what fits the way I express
mm,
myself. And I think that's so important for people to do. That script is perfect, but one script was created by one person, right? And maybe you just need to tweak it a little bit. And in order to connect with people, I really truly believe that hard power, whether it was in person or over the phone, you guys can now feel my quantum field. Joe Dispenza is talking about the quantum field we have around us. I can feel yours. And so I think that it's so important to realize that this is much more about emotional connection. We can name the book Emotional Intelligence 2.0, right? Like it's much more about emotional connection
yeah.
than like really, especially from the beginning, trying to be professional, trying to like be picture perfect. I think it's way more about simply opening the heart and believing in what we do and believing, having the blind faith and that conviction based on no evidence that simply what we do is the right thing, and that everyone, no matter whether it's the oldest lead in the world or whether it's today's lead, everyone somehow needs our help. And I think that was, again, out of kind of lack of um, experience and lack of knowledge, but it was also delusion. And delusion is so important. Like you hear that from all over the place. That
Mm,
healthy type of delusion uh, has helped me a lot.
yeah.
Yeah. And you talked about belief there. That was one, because you can have the biggest heart in the world, but if you don't believe that the solution that we have for people can actually make an impact or a difference in their life, they're going to feel that. They're not going to believe you either, even if you have the biggest heart in the world. And so I hope that some new agents hear this and they're like, man, I got to get to a conference, because I would imagine there was a good amount of that belief that probably came from going to those events, seeing other people leading with their heart first and their conviction in what it is we do for people. Um, I'm just kind of throwing that out there. I'm assuming that you had an ironclad belief in, like, yeah, insurance is a going to be a big benefit to anybody who has it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it was just installed in me, and uh, yeah, like you say, and it people can feel it. People can 100% feel it, whether you just call them to get the paycheck or not. Like, to me, conference is actually way more about getting you that extra engine, I would say, that you're gonna use once you run out of your daily regular motivation, if you know what I mean. Like, once it gets hard and we sitting now in our offices typically alone, we don't see anyone doing it around us, right? Uh, to me, it gives me that extra urgent engine, knowing that there's somebody else who is way further in this business, who has gone through this, what we going through, and people of different types of background, people that with no education, or people who have been in a really bad situation, made it to the point where they doing very, very well today. And I think this is just so
Yep.
important, just that firm belief that the system works, because there's a evidence for it, right? We don't have evidence of our skills and our skill set, which can be developed, but we have evidence of so many people who are no better than us. They are just further in the process than us. And I think that's, you don't have it in real estate industry. Like, you don't have a blueprint in my real estate business. Nobody is there on the phone 24/7 to tell me how to do this, right? So it's just
Yeah.
a huge
Yeah.
advantage we have.
Mm. So, on the topic of evidence, real quick, because there's a lot of people listening who were attracted to sales because of how quickly you could get ridiculous results. And that's one of the reasons I became addicted to sales. Like, I could go buy leads on Monday, book appointments for Monday and Tuesday, and have thousands of dollars hit my bank account by Thursday or Friday. And I can do that every single week. And a lot of people look at this and that's what's appealing because of what it can get them. But what a lot of people don't know about you, Lee, correct me on the specific dollar amount, but I heard you say on a call one time, when you first came to America and became a lifeguard, you had something like $200 or $300 to
Yeah,
your name. Is
yeah,
that right?
yeah. 250. Yeah, you're right.
This man had $250 to his name in a new country, learning a new language, working as a lifeguard for 7 years, got his license in insurance in 2018. By 2021, he was building his house with his wife on the water in Florida. Soon after that, he got his citizenship. I follow you on Instagram. I know you got a Mercedes Benz, a freaking sick car. Your wife drives a BMW. You guys have nice stuff, and you've been able to accomplish a lot of material things that kind of serve as evidence. I've been in the business the same amount of time. The feeling that I have having built a house, I now have a tangible piece of evidence that I can drive home to every day and say, sales got me that. Every time I get in my car, I'm like, this is helping families get insurance and sticking with the disciplined actions that compound over time. I mean, you didn't sell 5 grand on your first Monday and then take 3 days off, did you? You were like, I could do this every single day, and you went on a tear. And so for the people who, I mean, everybody knows you're an insane producer. Like, the results you've been getting, not everybody's going to get that. Everybody can, not everybody will. When did you start recruiting? Because a lot of people who are heavy, heavy producers aren't the best at recruiting. And that's just the truth. Or if they do recruit people, they're not at their caliber. But you have multiple people on your team who are 3, 4, $500,000 plus per year producers. When did you start recruiting? How did you attract these people, man?
Yeah, so I ran into one, not issue, but obstacle that I was told from the very beginning has stopped many, and I can name many people on the top of uh, the company. And that is that I had a wrong perception about leadership. That's why I had a hard time recruiting from the beginning. That's why actually we were blessed to get Latanya James to be, one of our business partners, and she deserves way more respect than I do because she's actually a single mother of four kids, right? And doing what she's doing, which is absolutely incredible. Buying only B leads, by the way, only B leads. Okay, doing $740,000. That's like hands down. But the
Yeah,
obstacle was
that's insane.
I had a wrong perception about what is leadership, to be 100% honest, because leadership was to me leading from the front, showing people how great I can be, what can be done, uh, simply showing them the path until about 2 or 3 years ago. And the switch is happening up until now. The switch has happened when, for some reason, I was avoiding some of John Maxwell's books because the books you see behind me
Mm,
are books, but mainly it was like that alpha male stuff, that like do or
yeah,
die attitude, and David Goggins, and this kind of stuff. And then I grabbed a couple of John Maxwell's book, and I realized that leadership is actually not about letting people know how great I am, but it's letting them know how great they are, how incredible potential is in them, right? And then having the skills to let them leverage it, right? And develop it, and win with it. And I think it's one of the most beautiful transformations that has happened in my life when you experience that, seeing Latanya James on the stage gives you chills,
yeah,
makes you more
yeah,
happy and proud than yourself on the stage. I think it's a beautiful transformation. And I think, to me, it came around the age of 30, right? Uh, and it was supposed to be like that. I always also think that, there's a reason why in the airplane they let us put the oxygen mask on us, right? First, so we can help others. And so Ed Milet is saying, and that's been my case in my life, the best things typically come out of desperation because great things require more than just that need or want or that motivation. They require certain level of desperation that's going to push you to do a little bit more. The Power of One More is a great book by Ed Milet,
yep,
right?
yep,
And simply, and I'm happy to admit that, one of my goals was to establish that financial freedom and that security, because most people, most divorces, for example, are because of money, right? Because of the financial situation. And so I had that goal of establishing a certain lifestyle, absolutely not about the material things. The beauty about material things is sometimes we need to get them in order to realize how we don't really need them, right? And it's not really fulfilling at the end. But more about simply, once that oxygen mask is on us, that's why we encourage new agents to produce, right? And put money in their bank account so they can breathe, so they can actually remove that money pressure, and they can actually open eyes and look around what impact is really about, right? And I think we all have different seasons, for that. Some people step into this business with that because of previous experience or because of simply their knowledge or the season of life. For me, it was first couple of years of producing. I did like over $600,000 my first year in the business. I believe I
wow,
was number one producer, and I realized that all I am buying by that production is time. I realized that first day in
yep,
the field that I actually brought home more than what I would bring home after like 6 weeks in the job. And that gave me the power, realizing that I'm buying time with my kids. I'm buying time with my wife. And that was really driving me. But then really you get to the point when you totally shift perspective, and now developing people and kind of dropping that ego. Ego is the enemy is a great book by Ryan Holiday. That was a big thing to me, and I love to say that because we all have that ego, and sometimes it's just time to drop it and be way more vulnerable. Which vulnerability is a superpower. So that's the process I'm still in. To be honest, I'm still at the very beginning of
Yeah.
my leadership journey. However, realizing that the leader is not the one who is leading from the front and breaking all the records and showing people what's possible is not the leadership that at the end gets us where we want to get. However, I think it's very important. Just like you said, we are not getting paycheck. We are investing in leads, and um, entrepreneurship is like a roller coaster, right? We all feel that multiple times a
Yeah.
day. We
Yeah,
are
it
on the
is.
top, we are down. But when you realize, when I think about it now, like where else I can gain the knowledge and the full bulletproof conviction of, hey, God forbids I need $10,000 by tomorrow. B- if somebody is threatening me and saying, you better give me 10,000 by tomorrow, like we have the skills, we've developed the skills to do that, right? We just pick up the phone today
Yep.
and go. So it's important to see the freedom in it as well.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess two things that really stood out to me there. First is I also love that book, Ego's the Enemy. I've recommended it to a couple people and they're like, I don't have an ego. I'm like, that is your ego saying that, just so you know. Um, but you talked about manifestation a little bit earlier. And I'm curious. So you obviously manifested some of these things as far as production goes, but I'm curious how that played into the building side of things. Like, were you manifesting, hey, I'm going to find somebody who is going to, break company records on bonus leads? Like, I'm curious what the manifestation looked like around building a team and how that shifted from the production side to the leadership side of things.
hmm Well, first of all, I had evidence for manifestation again, which we can see in many books. You can see Arnold Schwarzenegger. Actually, there's a research saying that if you just imagine to exercise the muscle versus those who were really exercising it in the gym, actually, those just imagining it had a better results. Or it was like with playing piano. There was a research about it. And actually, Arnold Schwarzenegger said that one of his biggest strengths is when he was working out, he was really just manifesting those muscles to grow. And I think about it a lot in the gym when I exercise, but listen audiobook and the exercise is done, and I totally forget that any movement has been done. Right. Uh,
Mm.
However, and we can see so many examples, and I really first that belief in manifestation has to be developed in order to manifest. I believe. I believe in going to Ferrari shop if you want to have Ferrari, because I truly believe that you got to become Ferrari person first before you have Ferrari, for instance. Or people ask me when I build this home, people ask me how does it feel? How does this desk feel? And it feels so normal to me because I've been touching this desk for years. I actually
Yeah.
there's a version of the book Think and Grow Rich that has like a template for manifestation, and I used it like 10 years ago. And when I now record what I promised myself to have by the age of 30 in all areas, and now I play that, looking that I had no evidence for it back then. And it all not only happened, it was surpassed. It really makes me go like, wow, it's just why not, right? Why not to create that recording? We all can do it today. Record ourselves and provide it manifestation. Robin Sharma has a great one, the daily superhero, which I start my day with for like past 12 years. The manifestation to ourselves, to keep the promises to ourselves, to be captains of our destiny, authors of our fortune, and makers of our empire. That's what it's about. Again, coming back to delusion. So then, when I started producing, nobody was doing 10K a week for like so many consecutive weeks, right? Nobody was even doing it for, back then you were on the top of the leaderboard with 5K. Um, However, where I always ask people, where's your thermostat? You ask who wants to be a lead
Mm.
producer, And they say, I want to be elite producer. And then you ask, and raise your hand if you are already a lead producer in your mind. And, it's about 50% of them, because you got to become it. You got to become it in your mind. You got to manifest it. You got to feel it. And then you just bring it to reality. You cannot have thermostat at 5,000 and try to do 10,000. It just doesn't work. And so this is how I started with the 10K a week. Again, it's a cliche, but you can do it for 1 week. Of course, you can do it for 2 weeks, but then can you do it for 10 weeks, 20, 100 weeks, right? You have to realize the consequences, and you have to develop very strong ability to say no, which Warren Buffett is the most
Yeah.
saying is the most important skill, to say no to things that don't serve us. And also, one of my mentors said, if in your 20s, 30s, you put your head down, lock yourself in the room, and just do the work, in 5 years, your life will completely change. And I've been saying that
So true.
kind of before, when all of this started happening and when all the manifestations started coming to pass. Like, my parents thought that I'm selling drugs or something, because it was happening so fast. It was like there was no rational explanation for that. Um, and so, you get obsessed with it. As Ed Milet is saying, turn your obsession into possession. That's definitely true. And now, with to respond to your question, the manifestation of the team, there is evidence in it that we can see at the conference. We can see the evidence of those from multiple different backgrounds being able to make it, uh, and it just requires the same work as it did to become a really great producer. And I think
Yeah.
actually that this business makes us grow in areas we didn't even know we need to grow in, right? And that's what I love. It's tough. It requires totally different skill set. Um, but again, having the evidence, having the self credibility, and knowing that every single thing that has been worth it in life has been hard and had a seasons of being in despair and being um really down, not knowing how, if, and when. Those are the seasons that actually make us feel alive, and that are necessary in order to get it to where we want to be. So I'm still in the process of becoming the leader that I envision myself to be. And the good thing is that I don't put the finish line or finish date on it. It just know it's gonna happen. It just requires daily, step by step, self promise keeping.
Absolutely. And manifestations are one of those things that, can sound a little bit out there when you first hear about it. I've gotten to the point where I'm like, they work. So, I don't question why or how. It's just, it works. Don't question it and go do it. And I love the last thing you said. Like, I guess shout out 50 Cent. That I first heard it in one of his songs of like, joy wouldn't feel so good if it weren't for the pain, right? If you're always at that, you know, I'm on top of the world, everything is going well, suddenly that's not going to feel good anymore. That's just normal. That's your baseline. And I think that's something important to recognize in entrepreneurship is like, or sales, those ups and downs. The only reason the ups feel good is because the lows do not feel as good. And, pushing through that is how you get to the next high. Yeah, I love all of that.
Hmm. I got a practical question for you, Lee. So, for the people out there who've never done 10 grand in a week, just to kind of get tactical real quick, because we've talked about the discipline and the importance of like the proper mindset and belief that it really takes to not only have a good week, but also sustain high end results. From a practical standpoint, like what did your schedule look like, man? Did you have certain days that you were doing production and certain days you were doing recruiting? Were you just taking a ton of leads? Like how did you, what was the recipe you followed? Because you obviously followed the recipe every single week. That's how you did it for 235 weeks. But what did that recipe look like for you? Because it didn't take you long to figure it out.
Yeah. So first, it was just a pure grind. To be honest, it was just a pure commitment and grind. without knowing if it's ever going to work out. It was never a plan to do 10K. It's important. I don't say that a lot. It's never been my goal to do 10K, like even for 10 weeks in a row, but it become my standard. It became my standard that
Yeah.
uh, I simply was not satisfied. The reason I actually stopped after 239 weeks was it was getting tied a little too much to my identity. So I,
Yeah. I
you know,
feel you.
and that was already like happening for a couple of weeks, and I still let it go. And I was like, maybe 8,500 would be fine. But I was like, no, it's not and it can be a dangerous place, getting tied to your identity, and then even feeling like a failure from not doing that. So I'll be honest, the moment I stopped, it took me some time to accept it. That maybe it's time for a different season of life, and realizing that actually I've developed the skill set, and with if I would be willing to make the sacrifices I was making, it could continue. But that's why Marshall Wayland often says, "Hey, what worked for me might not work for you." That's why we have all of these
Mm.
resources we can take. And at the beginning, I was super structured, so I just gave it all the time, all I've had, and I needed to realize before I stepped in it. Uh, how often I want to talk to my mom, for example, right? Like how often I want to
Mm.
watch the TV. So I didn't watch any TV. Like again, little choices. Do I want to, when I drive for appointments, am I going to listen some SoundCloud or, educational or like a call or national call, or am I going to like listen to music? I didn't really listen to music for the first couple of weeks, right? But I was aware that this is
Me
the
too.
season. That cliche of becoming the student of the industry. I always say I was like a sponge. I would just soak in all the information in, and just did monomonacular focus. I think one of the biggest things these days is like really for people to keep focus, right? Because there's so many distractions.
Mm.
And so I was just monomonacular focused until, however, those 700 dials actually turned out to be like, I later needed like Saturday, 2 to 3 hours in the morning. I graduated to A leads, right? So up until today, I'm using MIA leads. And I was taking typically like 10 of them, right? And if there
Mm.
was a need, um, I got some more over older leads. However, what people don't realize that I just look in my opt. I have over 5,000 um, contacts in my op, right? I think I have like 2,400 clients. And I'm always saying, if I wouldn't grab any leads for next, I don't know, maybe year or two, I would be fine because the
Yeah.
relationships that are already developed. I contact people specifically. Now it's going to be Labor Day, Thanksgiving. I contact people during these holidays when they see their families. Like, if handled properly, uh, we don't talk enough about maybe you won't have to buy leads forever. Maybe you'll
Yeah.
establish that
Yeah.
the sphere of influence and that contact list that will give you more freedom. So it was simply from grind into realizing that it's really getting lighter and lighter. That huge ball I'm holding is getting lighter and lighter, and that brings more and more freedom. And it's a beautiful feeling when suddenly you realize that from that Sunday of dial-in, just in a few months or few weeks, you're not gonna have to do that. You'll be okay to dial just on Saturday, right? So it's important to have that vision of what's gonna happen, have it supported by the evidence of what happened to those who have done it, right? One of the rules is only like I wouldn't, and I always say that respectfully, like I wouldn't go to somebody who is broke and poor to ask how to get wealthy, right? That's just
Right.
not how it works.
Makes sense.
So
They don't know.
we have so many people here who can, direct us and tell us what needs to be done because they have done it actually.
Yeah. There's evidence all around us, man. The beauty is like we can create our own evidence of what we're capable of. And then that gives us the proof when we're going through one of those low points on the entrepreneurial roller coaster of like, okay, I recognize that this downslope is temporary, and as long as I stick with my habits and my disciplines, I'm going to be on the upward trajectory. Um, I love that, dude. And then when we when I was new, man, I had no evidence. I had to look at the people around us. And I know Xander can resonate with that a lot too. Just in our agency alone, in the cook group, there's evidence all over the place, but there's tons in the company. And the cool part is it's not just one type of person winning. Like it's all different backgrounds, different ages, different countries people have come from, different prior experience. I mean, it's so stinking cool. Xander, do you have, I know we got a couple minutes left here, but anything else you want to dig into to pick Lee's brain on, man? I feel like we could go a couple different directions for the last couple minutes, but
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting, right? We had Max Valerie Masson on the other week, and
yep.
he had a similar perspective. He was like, my lack of knowledge of English actually ended up being a superpower. He was like, people were probably telling me objections on the phone, and I was like, yeah, I don't know what you just said. That's exactly why I'm calling. Um, and so you're the second person who has said that. I'm trying to figure out because people who understand English, it's their first language. They get two in their head and they hear an objection. And, when I was brand new in sales, I was like, oh, well, I guess that's the end of the road. When the reality is typically that's smoke and mirrors, right? You need to just figure out how to get through that. What advice would you give to
Mm,
a brand new agent who is, let's say they weren't at conference, but maybe their friend was, and they're like, yeah, insurance symmetry is so cool. They're thinking about getting their license, or maybe they just got it. Like, what advice would you give them? I have an idea of what you might say, but I want to hear it from you.
It's incredible. And Elijah, like I want to, because we've known each other for a while. I love to watch your progress, and that's a perfect example. You don't have to start off like super skyrocketing. Like that's why there are seasons, right? Like I always say, I I probably wouldn't want to do like another 239 weeks of 10K now because it's a different season of
yeah.
life, right? And this beautiful.
Yep.
There just has to be that inner strong core belief of being on the right path. I would, and it's funny, after conference, how many people are like texting and messaging and just reaching out because they're fired up and they know they have it inside, right? Uh, One of my
Yeah.
mentors, Jason Dries, he's incredible. I highly recommend his book "Do the Impossible." And he's a great coach and mentor. Uh, he's saying that if there is something that you deep down constantly keep thinking about and you constantly feel like you want or need, it means that the universe is already on the way and already working on
Yeah.
attracting it to you, right? And I think that especially at the beginning, pretty much everything we mentioned, I would say the blind faith and the healthy delusion and the belief in that hard power, because it's hard to say, hey, believe in your skills, which at the beginning we don't have. But really, I would
Right.
say that it's just that the blind faith, knowing that it's going to need extraordinary effort, that there needs to be no evidence in your skills besides your conviction. Because every time I was talking about something that I already had in my mind, especially my parents are very rational and right. Like we can talk about like the history of Europe that is impacting the mindsets up until now, right? Like I was born
Yeah.
1 year after the communism broke apart. So you're not gonna get it out
Wow.
of people's minds like within 20, 30, 40 years, right? However, just the belief that we are really limitless and we are capable of anything. And sometimes the only thing we need is our conviction. Maybe, in other words, faith, which none of us have a faith 100% of the time, but really connecting that evidence we have with the self credibility we can start developing right now with delusion and manifestation, supporting it by massive action.
Mm. Mm. What a great way
Phenomenal.
to wrap a bow on this, Jed.
Yeah.
That is so good. Um, So for the people out there who maybe are not a part of Symmetry, I mean, if you're in Symmetry, you already know who Lee is. And you probably know his wife too. I follow both of you guys on Instagram. It's so cool seeing just how you guys are both building. You're building two businesses at the same time, which some people may not know. You're building a real estate company and an insurance business. And what's neat is there's people in our company who are doing that at different levels. Even, I mean, look at Edward Pritchett. I got to hang out with Edward Pritchett on a carrier trip a couple years ago, and that was his segue. He built his insurance business, and then he's getting into real estate and using the money from that. Like, the opportunity is limitless if you decide. For the people who can kind of relate to your voice and they're attracted to your energy, for a lack of better words. How do people get in touch with you, Lee? Where plug your Instagram, or I wouldn't put your phone number out there, but how would you? How do we funnel people to you, man?
Yeah, I love Instagram, and I use Instagram and Facebook. So Lee_Jedlicka, and Lee Jedlicka on Facebook. That's really part of my story. Some of the carriers still have me as a Libor Jedlicka. Some of you might know me as this was my original name, Libor, Libor. And becoming a citizen was a perfect opportunity to change it, and really easy way to change it. So I'm now officially Lee, which makes life much easier. I don't have to spell it
Nice.
times a day. So yeah, I'm happy. Just one thing, I remember when I started, I was reaching out to like people I saw on the leaderboards and like top leaders in Symmetry, um, and of course, most of the time I didn't get response. I think this is important to say, and I don't
Mm,
blame them. That's because we get hundreds of messages, right? However, that actually served as a great motivation, because I remember one of the first things at the first conference was I want these people to know my name. I want to get in their circle. And
mm,
in my opinion, at that time, the best way to get to their circle was to be on the leaderboard day in, day out. You know,
yep,
that's the
yep.
fastest way how to get recognized and get to those spheres of people you want to be around, which is one of the most powerful things, right? That's why these conferences and events are so powerful. That's why this podcast is so powerful, because you attract and like-minded people, and you make an impact, and hopefully those the right ones will always turn on this podcast instead of maybe 1 hour of news, and that can change their life. So
Mm,
super proud.
mm. Thank you, man.
Appreciate
Thank you
that.
for
Yeah.
being on, brother. I think we might have to do a part two. We might have to. I feel like there's a lot of directions we didn't get into, but appreciate you being on here, man.
Yeah, appreciate you so much. Even with my
Likewise.
wife, like I think it's great to talk about how it's related to the business, right? Like doing business together. I think that's something that needs to be discussed more. But again, I'm just so grateful, guys.
Thank you, man. Thank
Thank you
you.
for making the time.
With that, appreciate you guys tuning in, and go give Lee a follow if you don't already follow him, and we will see you guys next Friday. Peace.
Peace.
Appreciate you guys. Take care. Bye.